Part 3.
Historical evidence of the effect of smallpox on human history goes back several millennia or thousands of years. Inoculum is an old Latin term that's referring to grafting one plant on another, where you would take a budding eye from one plant and graft it physically, usually by cutting one plant and inserting the bud into that plant, is a term that's adapted and adopted when we talk about developing and creating techniques to protect someone from smallpox. The concept of conscientious objection. When we think of a conscientious objector today, we think of someone who is deliberately, essentially, not wanting to become involved in military service. But it's actually a term that stems back to 1898, when someone didn't want to partake of vaccination.
Historical evidence, as illustrated on this timeline, indicate that Chinese history, as far back as around the 1500s, or maybe even further to around 200 BCE, is when the procedure that we call variolation was used to protect children and their families from smallpox. Variolation, or inoculation by variolation, could occur either by inhalation or by scratching the skin and introducing some crusty material from a smallpox scab into that lesion. Variolation is, again, using smallpox material to protect someone from smallpox. Smallpox epidemics were well noted for thousands of years, and notice here in 1545, an epidemic in India had roughly 8,000 children die in this one particular epidemic that is suggested was introduced into that population by some foreigners, the Portuguese, who had come to trade with the local population.
Also notice the change in identifying age historically. The old nomenclature was BC, before Christ, and AD, Anno Domini, year of our Lord. The new, more sort of correct methodology and notation is BCE, before the Common Era, which is equivalent to the old BC identifiers, and CE, Common Era, which is equivalent to the old AD descriptors on dates and times. One of the ways that we recognize that smallpox has been around for thousands of years and affected human populations, probably even prehistorically, is that it's one of the few diseases that has its own gods and goddesses. Each god or goddess had its own attributes, often even having dual personalities, where the deity conferred protection from the disease as well as caused the disease itself. Humans have always had this sort of spiritual association with diseases. Even today, there are some people who do truly believe that if you're sick, it's because you're a bad person. Scientifically, we can't demonstrate this. What we can demonstrate scientifically are that infectious diseases are in fact caused by microorganisms, and there are true natural causes that we can observe and document, including smallpox, for infectious disease. The first documented cases of smallpox go back to about 1350 BCE, during the reign of the Hittite emperor Smallpox, when he and his warriors captured Egyptian prisoners. At the time, the Hittites and the Egyptians were adversaries, and amongst the Egyptian prisoners there was at least a few cases of smallpox. The Hittites had never encountered smallpox before, or at least there's no documented evidence of it, and the Hittite king and his heirs were fatally infected, with no obvious survivors of the royal family, no clear line of succession, which we will see historically occurs over and over. Once the leadership has been decimated due to disease and early death, then oftentimes empires, including the Hittite Empire, fall apart and can easily be overtaken by others. The mummified remains of Ramses V, discovered in 1979, clearly demonstrated that thousands of years ago, smallpox-like disease was around. We're not certain if he died of smallpox, but visible skin eruptions were still apparent on his mummified skin, suggesting that smallpox-like diseases have occurred for thousands of years, particularly in and around Egypt and along those trade routes emerging out of Egypt. Remember, in ancient times, Egypt was a very powerful nation, or source of trade and wealth for the whole entire region in that time. One of the more famous ancient epidemics or pandemics was the Athenian plague, 430 BCE. In 431, the Peloponnesian War had broken out between the Spartans and the Athenians. Greece as a nation really wasn't established at the time, but instead what we might recognize as city-states, or groups of individuals with particular political or cultural differences. And definitely the Spartans and the Athenians were at distinct opposite poles or opposite ends of the spectrum of design and culture, goals, creativity, political desire. As such, the conflict between the two groups was pretty severe. At the beginning of the Peloponnesian War, it was thought that the Athenians certainly would win, because they did have an advantage of a strong navy. Unfortunately, a year or so after the war had begun, the Athenian plague broke out within the walled city of Athens. High mortality, well documented by a historian by the name of Thucydides, who was present and in fact got sick with the Athenian plague at the time. His well-documented description of the symptoms of the Athenian plague do suggest a pox-like illness, possibly smallpox. It's hard to really say for sure, since we don't have a lot of well-documented materials or any kind of preserved specimens that we can for sure analyze and accurately determine. But in any case, the Athenian plague is one of the well-documented ancient epidemics that medical historians do study. At the time, the Athenians had a very charismatic and dynamic leader by the name of Pericles. Pericles and all of his followers were in fact fundamental in the development of a political concept that we now take for granted called democracy. That essentially every person who is considered a citizen should participate and join in the leadership of a community and a country. When Pericles died, roughly in 429 BCE, from the plague that was spreading throughout the population in Athens, it did dramatically change the course of the outcome. And the weakening of the general populace by the plague did eventually lead to the Spartans winning the Athenian plague Peloponnesian War in 404 BCE. The Athenian historian Thucydides, documenting the Athenian plague, thought that the reservoir, or the source, of the disease were trade goods brought into Egypt from Ethiopia. There was a fairly famous port city, Piraeus, through which all goods and materials, many at least, would come from outside sources into Athens. And certainly that could have been a very good source of transfer of disease materials, or some kind of fomite. It's hard to say exactly where and what disease materials were brought in, or maybe it was just a person. But in any case, it certainly did decimate the Athenian population and affected the outcome of the Peloponnesian War. Another 100 years forward, the same type of epidemic broke out in Macedonia, and among the followers of Alexander the Great, and it's thought that it's possible, though there were actually many possible causes of the death of Alexander the Great in 323 BCE, that in fact smallpox could have easily been one of the possible causes of death of Alexander the Great. Quite a few ancient leaders died prematurely due to infectious diseases, and of course smallpox would be one of the leading choices or possibilities when trying to figure out what caused their early demise. Moving ahead a few hundred years to 164 CE, the Antonine Plague breaks out among the Roman troops and the Roman population in Italy, particularly in northern Italy, where the Roman army are fighting or trying to hold back aggressive populations of people who are at odds with the imperialistic ventures of the Roman Empire. The plague itself dramatically killed at least 3 to 7 million people. Again, these are ancient numbers, and it's hard to get an accurate tally or determination. Lasted roughly 16 years, and along with the high mortality, realized that the populations were fairly sparse at the time. So even 3 million people gone was a huge drain on the resources of that country at the time. The Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who was a fairly charismatic, intelligent, well-experienced emperor, unfortunately died during this time. He didn't have a designated heir, but he did have a son who was able to step in. Unfortunately, his son had definitely different ideas of how to run the empire, and essentially began to withdraw troops from the northern borders that was going to contribute to the eventual downfall of the Western Empire.
Realize that the northern borders of Italy at this time were in areas in Europe that we would now recognize as parts of Germany.
In ancient China, starting around 350 CE, descriptions of symptoms of smallpox are present in documents from that time. In addition to descriptions of the symptoms, there's also a description of where the most likely source of the disease was, and that was essentially invasions or conflicts along the western border of China. That's why the disease got the name barbarian pox. Continued reports in about 370 CE, over the next 3 centuries or so, repeated constant epidemics in that area, that part of the world, probably helped to establish smallpox as an endemic disease from at least the 3rd or 4th century onward. Through the 5th, 6th, and 7th century, conflict between countries and armies crossing borders probably helped to spread smallpox through North Africa, Spain, Portugal, and most of what we now recognize today as Europe. In the 8th, 9th, and 10th century, Arabian alchemists, philosophers, physicians, medicine in general, the best in the world at the time, was found from Arabian physicians. A physician with an anglicized name of Razis is one of the more preeminent physicians of ancient times because he documented thoroughly symptoms and signs of all types of diseases and treatments. He included descriptions and differences between smallpox and measles in around 900 CE, which before Razis clearly defined those two different diseases, both smallpox and measles were often confused in descriptions or describing patient symptoms in ancient documents. Razis has given us, over centuries, solid medical information that was used for many centuries for treatments of diseases and diagnosis of disease. Razis was well known for writing encyclopedic medical texts and writing the first comprehensive description of differences between smallpox and measles in his book, translated into Latin, Liber de Pestilentia. His encyclopedic medical dictionaries and encyclopedic medical texts were used for centuries, even up through the 19th century, including his Pestilentia text, which, when translated into English, is described as a treatise on smallpox and measles.